You just ignored them. They see that you are connecting, you're communicating, you are recognizing the existence of other people on the job site, but not them.
Ooh.
It's like you're walking by a bobcat. You're walking by a piece of equipment versus people.
Every single individual has a story to tell, and they're great stories that need to be heard.
I want every listener to know they have the ability to change the world.
Welcome to the 1720 Podcast.
What's up, Mountain Movers? Welcome back to the 1720 Podcast. Before we get this episode started, I just want to do a quick plug on Builder 2.0. This is a half-day training here in the Texo Association Training Building. It's October 13th at 7:30 a.m. The Mountain Movers and Lean Builder are combining forces for a very unique workshop for construction and leadership. Everyone's welcome. If you go to the Texo site, texoassociation.org, you can find a link to get signed up. Seats are filling in quickly. Myself, Keon, and Joe Donnarummo, all three of us are going to be doing this workshop together. Hopefully you'll get some value from it. We're really excited to roll that out. And without further ado, we kind of have a little Uno reverse with Bradley Hartmann today.
True.
I was on your podcast about a month ago, and now you're coming and gracing us with your presence. I'm super excited about this one.
Likewise. Long-time listener, first-time caller / guest, so great to be here.
Yeah. And I chuckled a little bit putting your prep sheet together. You had asked me on your podcast what I thought the Bears record was going to be, and I'm pretty sure I said 11-6.
You did. So let's clarify.
Yeah.
Dude, things have gone downhill in a hurry.
Yeah.
Did you see the defensive coordinator? It was for mental health reasons. I know they're under a lot of stress. I just know that's not good. I'm not going to say any more than that. I don't know the details. And then you saw Justin Fields comes out and just says, hey, I think a lot of our struggles are just robotic play calling. And I'm like, uh-oh, guys are going off script. Everybody's feeling the heat. So I think there are some leadership elements of how strong teams act, but I don't know. The splintering is coming a little too early for my liking here.
Immediate. Week one, I think I texted you, like, that was the worst Bears game I think I've ever seen. Week one.
They made Jordan Love look like Aaron Rodgers at the peak of Aaron Rodgers' power.
You didn't even know if the Packers were good or not after that game.
You did not. No. Oh, I know. I was thinking about that too. And I saw your text. I'm like, oh man, here we go. Another year of being a Bears fan. But it's a long season, Kevin. It's a long season.
Yeah, we might get one win. We might drum that up. I was telling my wife last night, like, we're not just NFL news, overall sports news. When you open the ESPN app, the Bears are at the very top. Like, it's just, yay, fun times.
You want to know something unintelligent that I did? I was doing my fantasy draft with many members that you know of the Texo family, and Justin Fields was available. I said, you know what would be exciting? This is going to be the year he breaks out. I'm going to be along for the ride. Now, every Sunday, it's doubly worse. Not only are they terrible and I have to watch it, I'm also like, kicking myself because my fantasy team is doing terrible. So anyway, live and learn, buddy.
Yeah, so we don't have many Bears fans, so we will move on from that.
Meanwhile, the Dallas Cowboys look like the best team in the NFL.
Yeah.
Although, expectations, let's manage those. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll manage them. Stewie couldn't be here today, and he said it's because he's busy with work, but I'm pretty sure it's because we saw some videos, I think yesterday, that you on your Construction Leadership podcast had Rick Fox on.
We did.
So how did you snag him, man?
Dude, it's unexciting. So we saw they had, a few months ago, they had a seed round. They raised $12 million. And I saw it, and then I saw Rick Fox. I was like, I'm an NBA guy. Followed him, went to North Carolina, and then played for the Celtics, and then he was a captain on the Lakers team, won 3 championships with Kobe and Shaq. And I kind of had this cognitive disconnect, like, what? What the hell is he doing with concrete?
Yeah.
And then I opened up the website. It talks about carbon negative concrete using steel slag and brine from saltwater desalination. I'm like, what the hell is happening? I got to talk to this guy. So we reached out to his team, and they were fantastic to work with. And like, everybody's busy. 6 months later, we got him on the pod, and he was gracious and he was smart. And it was a lot of fun. And I got to nerd out a little bit, asking about NBA and leadership in the second half of the episode. It was fun.
Oh man, that's so awesome. You might not know this, but we have this like Stewie bingo, and one of the tiles is him bringing up basketball because that's his absolute jam. So it's fun to poke at him, but I know he's up against it at work. That's truly why he's not here. He would have loved to be here.
2 gingers from Chicago who have migrated south. He's probably like, I'm going to sit this one out. Probably a wise move. But.
Yeah, there's a lot of 3 fingers in the air, maybe swearing, but we know that's my goal to not do that.
Right. It's a good goal. I've tried to adopt it unsuccessfully so far, but hey, life goes on. It's a journey.
For sure. Well, straight in the ditch we went, but let's start from the beginning now. Who is Bradley? Where'd you grow up? What's all the things?
Yeah, so grew up in Elgin, Illinois, northwest suburb of Chicago that I know you know, and kind of got in the business right away there. My father worked in a lumber yard business, so started working in the yard, and we'll kind of talk about where a tall, skinny ginger learned Spanish and how did that come about. And then 7.5 years ago, we moved down here to Dallas and absolutely love it. And ultimately, I think probably most important, husband, father. I got 2 kids that are 16, a junior in high school, and I got a 12-year-old who's in 6th grade. My wife, we met freshman year of high school, St. Edward's in Elgin, and kind of on and off our journey. We've been together ever since. So, and she works in the business now. She was a prosecutor for 13 years, and you know the area well. Cook County, south side of Chicago. Ooh. So that's kind of the really high level. I don't want to ramble on too long.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Elgin, so Michael Jordan in his prime did a basketball camp, and I forgot what college it was, but he did it in Elgin each year.
It probably would have been maybe like a Judson College. They would occasionally host they had a nice gym. That could very well be it.
Yeah, there was one moment where he would just show up for like 5 minutes. It was his camp, but he'd pull up in a different Ferrari every day.
That's how it works.
MJ23 on the license plate type of thing. And he showed up and he refereed my 3-on-3 game. Ball goes out of bounds. Michael Jordan's handing me the basketball. This is mid-90s to hand the ball back in. All I said was, "Nice bracelet." That's the 2 words I said to Michael Jordan when I had my shot. And he's like, "Yeah, throw the ball in, kid."
Well, was it a chunky gold bracelet? What was it?
Probably. I was, just foot and mouth. That's what I came up with, the GOAT, to say to him.
That's very funny. My buddies have a story about Dickie Simpkins, if you remember him. NBA player with the Bulls, kind of the second three-peat. He would occasionally show up at Judson College and just to hoop, to stay active. And there was a 3-on-1. And it was my buddy who was like 6'3", my buddy who was like 5'8", and Dickie Simpkins on the wing faked Dickie Simpkins to do an alley-oop to the 5'8" guy. And Dickie Simpkins was like, seriously? Like, what are you doing? So, yes, Judson College was probably that, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I keep driving us into the ditch. We'll go back. Lumberyard, a lot of us want to follow in our father's footsteps. Is that how you kind of got roped into it? You wanted to follow, or what's the story behind that?
I think so. Was always, obviously, the first mentor was my father. And I just knew the lumberyard was connected to the construction community.
Yeah.
Construction was cool. And he was like, listen, when you turn 15, you will work a summer job. You will work 40 plus hours a week. And every winter break, you will work. So the question was where? So they needed help in a yard. So I started, a week or 2 before my 14th birthday. And I was just one of the guys in the backyard just kind of chasing trucks, assembling 247 2x4s that people pick through, hoping nobody bought the railroad ties because I was far too weak to pick those up. And actually, that's kind of where the Spanish kind of came in. Growing up, Elgin was it was my hometown. And there was a sizable Hispanic population, sizable African-American population. And there's guys who look like me. And it was there where working in a lumberyard and our job, there was like 3 or 4 of us on a daily basis who were supposed to work there. Truck comes in, we chase after them, help them get what they need, get them out as fast as possible. And I see a pickup truck in the back and no one's helping him. And I'm just like, hey, who's up? Who's supposed to go help that guy? And they're like, we can't. I'm like, what do you mean you can't? This is literally our job. And they're like, he speaks Spanish. I'm like, so what? And they're like, well, you speak Spanish? Do you want to go help him? So I walk over and I probably said something along the lines of, hola, ¿cómo estás? To like felt confident with like the very basic, right?
Yeah.
And he kind of chuckled. He's like, "Oh, see, right." And I helped him load up his truck. And then as he was about to leave, he's like, "Hey, man, I speak English too. I'm bilingual. And just want to tell your buddies, he's like, when I come in here, me, and then my community, my Spanish speakers here, we know that the guys in the back of the yard don't help the Spanish speakers because they're probably afraid."
Yeah.
And that was a big moment for me. Later that day, I got a call from the GM. His name was Jeff. And Jeff came out and was like, "Hey, man, I need to talk to you." I'm like, "I'm sorry." He's like, "What'd you do?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just feel like I'm guilty of something." And he goes, "Actually, it's the opposite." He's like, "That guy, George.
Yeah.
George stopped in to see me after his conversation with you." And I said, "Okay, what'd he say?" He said, "When he comes, if you're working, he wants you to help him every time. And the more we can help guys who don't speak English, we will make more money because they're going other places to buy their lumber and building materials where they feel more welcome."
Wow.
So for me, it was like right there, you look at my career, looking back, it means more now. But at that point, I realized, okay, I helped somebody. That felt good. I used Spanish. Probably wasn't great, but it got me in. And now I'm getting recognized by my boss and, it's more profitable for them. So early on, I started kind of connecting the pieces that I would really dive in later about Hispanic construction workers, their role, and, some of the stereotypes and biases that we have that I think we still, to this day need to overcome.
Oh, we're going to get into that at a deeper level. What's cool hearing that story is not only, you're working at 14, lumberyard, you're building up that character of effort, hard work. Your dad's not handing you like titles beyond like the beginning and entry level. But man, what a unique thing where you're starting to also build your heart, compassion, and purpose that you don't have fully formed yet. The heart and compassion will later form the purpose, but like you have a heart for people and you're like, that's a missing link. And is that what drove you later to go to college and make Spanish? Like, I forgot exactly what your major was, but to take that as a major or a minor, like, did that spark that?
It did. Yeah, it came easy to me and it was fun. And I just found that, whether in the summer playing baseball, I had a couple buddies who, what they spoke every day was Spanish and I could talk to them. And I just kind of found like, all right, this ability to speak two languages, even if it wasn't great in Spanish, still differentiated me and helped me build stronger relationships. So I took it all 4 years in high school and I just knew I was good at it. I liked it. It wasn't hard. It gave me energy. So all these little signs, like it was fun, right? So I get to college and one of the questions you had was just about one of your first mentors. I had a professor, Richard Crome at Eastern Illinois University, and I missed one class and I was playing football at the time, which was, oh, no, you don't want to skip class. And the professors are supposed to basically report that right away. And you'd have to go basically run 5 miles at 4 a.m. And I come back, I hit some other class and I come back and there's a voicemail on at that time, there was an actual recorder that you'd actually put cassettes in to record it. And it says, "Hey, Bradley, this is Professor Crome. You missed my Spanish class this morning. I just want to let you know, if you miss this class one more time, I will come to Thomas Hall. I will find your dorm and I will jam my size 14 boot in your ass because you will never miss again." So I'm like, what? Like, this is like 3 weeks into my freshman year. And I play it for my roommate at the time who also played football. And I said, is this normal? Is this what professors do? He goes, "I don't think so." So I do not miss the next class. I come in and Professor Combs he's like, "Hey, Bradley, how are you?" I'm like, "I'm good." And he's like, "Did you get my voicemail?" I said, "Yes, I did." And he's like, "Listen," he's like, "I see something in you. You have fun in the class. You engage other people. These direct translations you do make people laugh. They get them more engaged. You have a gift here. I'm not sure if you're aware of that." And he says, "It is my responsibility to draw this out of you." He goes, "Do you understand?" And I said, "Yes, sir." In subsequent semesters, I took another 3 classes with him in the next 3 semesters. And he was the one who was like, "You got to go to Mexico, got to live there for 6 months. This is something, I don't know what it'll be, but you have something here." And it was like one of those points of recognition that obviously I'm aware of that on some level, but not like this. And now here's someone who's just going to push me forward. So that was really a pivotal relationship in my life.
What an outstanding story. A professor doing that with a funny start, leaving that recording. That's That's a Chicago deal right there. That sounds like a Chicago voicemail. That story does check out. But we talked about it a couple weeks ago with Joe Flores. We talk about it often, that the gold standard of mentorship is to see something in somebody before they can see it in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And again, man, what gifts that you're getting, that you're self-aware, kind of as an adolescent, but then have that gift in college for somebody to be like, you need to lean into this because you're special.
Yeah.
What a gift.
Absolutely. And kind of going back, I think part of this too is my wife, Melissa, she's Cuban. Her father still speaks with a very thick Cuban accent. Like there were all these other little things that like, this girl, she's special. I don't know where this will go. I didn't know at 15 or 19, but I had an idea. So I was like, okay, there are certain signs in my life that this is a big part of it and I like it and I'm good at it and I enjoy it.
And so you did, and I don't want to skip over the fact, seeing on your website, you're going to transition from Eastern Illinois to U of I.
I do.
And at Eastern, did Romo take your spot as quarterback on the football team? Or is that indulged a little bit? Or embellished, I'm sorry.
It's embellished a little bit. So I was there 2 years. By the way, if you get recruited to play college football, they do not tell you if you're going to be recruited to be the 5th string quarterback. I arrived in Charleston as the 5th string quarterback. And I had no idea. And I instantly realized I didn't lift enough. I didn't watch enough film. Like I was behind the 8 ball. Well, we'll fast forward. I end up by my redshirt freshman year, the second year there, I was a second string, got into one game. Tony Romo was a kind of Wisconsin kid, and I hosted his first recruiting visit to Charleston. He was a good kid. By the way, quarterbacks do not host recruiting visits for other quarterbacks. I don't want any other quarterback to come. I want it all for myself.
Of course.
Tight ends, running backs, wideouts, linemen, offensive linemen, sure.
Come one, come all.
Quarterbacks, not interested. So now at that point, I think we got like $100 cash when you hosted a recruiting visit. $100 cash in like 1997 was like $1 million.
Yeah, I mean,
you couldn't spend that on beer and food. But so anyway, so he came in. I left. He came in at the same time. So we literally missed each other. I hosted a recruiting visit. All my buddies there played alongside him. Said he was a wonderful teammate, an even better person, and obviously he basically won the Heisman for 1AA at that time. So that is the story. We did not play together, but you got Sean Payton, you got Tony Romo, you got Jimmy Garoppolo. Like all of a sudden, Eastern Illinois is kind of the cradle of quarterbacks. I was just one of the babies that fell out of the crib, and ended in construction. So that's the story.
I love that. And so, like, did you know in college you were going to go back to construction? For me, in my journey, every time I tried to pull out, the vortex would pull me back in, sort of thing. Like, where did you fall in that? Did you know in college, like, I'm going to take this and use it in construction, or did you have a completely different path?
That's a good question. Well, in college, if you majored in Spanish like I did, the entire career path is to teach it. So I transferred to University of Illinois, just going to be a regular student. I go to the one class, which is basically, we're going to put you in a classroom. I was in a classroom with, I think, 6th graders for an hour, and was like, nope, not for me, not doing it. You know what I do like? I like dealing with these knuckleheads on the job site. That is fun. So right around there I did, but it was like every summer or winter break. I got out of the lumber yard. I became a carpenter's apprentice, got involved in building. So it was like, I loved it. But if someone said, what are you going to do when you get out? I think the honest answer of junior year of college was, hell if I know. I know I'm not going to teach Spanish in a grade school, but I don't know what I'm going to do after that. And then after a while, I was like, oh, I got all this experience. I love it. I love seeing building happen. I love the team building. And then it was kind of obvious, like, oh, and then people were like, by the way, you can speak Spanish on the job site. That could be a huge asset. So that kind of came together there.
And you started your post-college season with a home builder, and just being able to bridge those two together. Even in Illinois, I would assume that helped with the Hispanic workforce. Like, you didn't start as a Spanish English teacher. You started as what, like a project engineer, estimator, something on the home building side.
Yeah.
But able to use that skill set.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, home building, this is kind of the go-go. This was 2000, 2001. Home building was just really picking up a lot of speed. And I realized the value of relationships where I'm a 22-year-old. My job is to, in theory, be a construction manager, on time, under budget, have guys clean up, be safe, be smart. right? And then you got the homeowner aspect of them coming in. And I realized at the pace we were building, which was like closing one a day, like there's not enough time. What you need to do is you need everyone, all the subs to really perform to their scope.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they weren't. And guys were like, this is part of the job. You got to figure it out. So I'm like, I don't know anything. I'm 22. I don't know how to influence. I don't know how to persuade. I've got a 58-year-old plumber who thinks he runs the whole job. He's leading people in a different direction. And it was really a conversation where I got to build relationships with the Hispanic demographic in Spanish, where I was basically like, tell me what I can do to help you. It's in the scope for you guys to do this. Can you help me? And one day I came in, there was like this giant mess in the corner. And I looked and like we had gotten better at just being more organized, being clean, getting on schedule. And I looked at this thing and I was about to like lose my mind. And there's the Spanish speaker and he's like, oye, wey, no te preocupes, wey. I got you. And I was like, what? He basically went over to the drywall crew. These guys were painters and basically said, you got to clean this stuff up.
Yeah.
So I started realizing, okay, if I can build relationships and I can say, this is how can I help you be more productive, more efficient? Here's what I need, right? Here's what can make my life easier. And by the way, if you make my life easier, my job is to make your life easier, right? And all of a sudden, people started just behaving differently, working closer together. They were more efficient. We closed houses more on time. They were more profitable. And all of a sudden, people are driving through. They're like, how did you do this? And I was like, obviously, it wasn't just me, but I think a big part of it, on the job, it's how do you build relationships, build trust? And then how do you hold people accountable, whether you're a 22-year-old or you're a 52-year-old? That's kind of part of what we were trying to piece together.
I love that. Your journey's exciting. I'm like trying to race to that section of it, right? Like, so you'd had 11 years with this home builder and you're starting to shape this purpose, right? Like year over year, you must be thinking like, I need to lean into this opportunity. So after about 11 years, I think it started at a different company name, but Bradley Hartmann Co.
Correct.
Gets birth. And I didn't even know that until right now, still in Illinois when this company started. Yeah. Is that the beginning of the company? Was the Spanish, the bilingual piece? That was like the core of you breaking off? Yeah.
So I went back to school, was getting my MBA, kind of nights and weekends sort of deal. And the last 4 years I was there, I got into purchasing. So I was one of the few guys who had built 1,000+ homes in the field and now looking at spreadsheets, doing the negotiation. And I was just seeing how poorly people communicated. My job was to buy stuff. It was purchasing. 100% of the time, I am buying your product. Now, the question is, am I buying it from you or someone else? And how do you make it easy or hard for me to do that? So I was going to the field and I was teaching and I was like, dude, there was waste everywhere. There were savings. So I started getting into that. So I was public speaking within my own company. I was doing more training. I was developing slide decks. I'm like, this I love. And we're also doing it with the Spanish speaking subs. So I was kind of doing that. Well, then the Great Recession hits and all of that goes away. And then they're like, here's what I need you to do. I need you to sit behind this computer and work in Excel and negotiate the hell out of everybody because we're going to do 80% less homes next year. And that's your new job for 80 hours a week. And I was like, I don't want that. I want something else. So meanwhile, I was getting my MBA and I said, all right, what would it look like if we did this? If we just kind of solved this English-Spanish language gap specifically for construction folks. So that's what we launched with in 2011. And, and that's kind of where that whole thing started.
Awesome, man. And that's what I want to get into here. Become the Hispanic employer of choice. That's the tagline on your website. Say more about that. Like why is it so important? Where are we missing? I'll just tee it up for you.
Yeah, I think companies realize that obviously there's a labor shortage there, and every year that goes by, that's going to continue to exacerbate. So, and I think when you kind of talk about purpose, for me, it comes down to how do we build strong teams, regardless of ethnicity or language preference or culture or whatever. How do we build strong teams? And how do we build them profitably and safely and all that stuff? So we have several clients have realized that we just need more of this type of people, right? We need more, we need more talent, period. Yeah. Where can we get it? And we have a willing segment of our demographic that wants to do this, yet a lot of them culturally think differently. Also, they might linguistically speak a different language. So as we talk about becoming the Hispanic employer of choice, it's number one, like how do we attract, onboard, and retain? For English speakers in the construction industry, and I'm going to generalize, the experience that English speakers get for the companies that employ them, that experience is vastly different than if you speak Spanish.
Mm.
So if I just visit the website, right, is anything in Spanish? Does anything recognize that, hey, you might be coming here and you could be super talented and there's a career path for you? Are we communicating that online at all? And then when we say, hey, we've hired you, we've worked around, however we worked around it, if it's, are you bilingual? Is it Spanish only? What's this experience like from a safety standpoint to the culture? How do we communicate why this place is special and you can build a career here versus the minute this job comes to an end and you hear a rumor that we're all going to get laid off and you don't know where the next dollar is going to come from, that you're going to split so you're not the one at the tail end of that who doesn't have a job, right?
Mm.
The music stops, chairs removed, and you're one of those last people. So a lot of what we do is how do we, between the language and the culture, because those are kind of the two big buckets. Too often we think, well, I know we got a problem. They speak Spanish, we speak English. That's the issue. Sometimes that is true, but I would say when it comes to power dynamics, persuasion, influence, storytelling, collaboration versus individualism, the Hispanic demographic is almost 180 degrees opposite from what I'll call, us Anglos.
Yeah.
So as leaders, thinking about situational leadership, are we aware of that? And are we adjusting our leadership style, our communication style to make sure that, hey, I'm a GM of a football team. I want all the talent I can get, right?
Yeah.
How do we figure that out? So
That's interesting. Trying to build a team, years back that started with a people first culture. In my opinion, that's a layup with office folks because it better be as a leader. I'm seeing them, touching them every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had a manufacturing arm that's the second easiest because I can walk out there every single day, chop it up with the people as much as I can, whether that's just a high five or if I can't speak Spanish or speaking Spanish to them and meeting them where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
Then the field's the difficult part. And I noticed we would do things like, forget Employee of the Month program. That came later. But just go into the site, period. How scared everyone was that Hefe's here. Like, there's radio signals and like they're concerned. And when I put my arm around somebody and be like, proud of you, dude, you're killing it. Keep it up. Because we've built generational distrust between the craft workers and ourselves, they're like, what's the catch? Like, why are you being nice?
Right.
What's in it for you?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'm just proud of you.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And then you come back and you do it again and again and again. And it took like, with some folks, 5 or 6 times, we're like, wait, do you actually care about me? I'm like, of course I do.
Mm-hmm.
And those are bittersweet moments because like, it's a shame that the industry is like that, but what an opportunity to really lean in and make yourself different for the right reasons and stand out.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for me to visit a job site, be with a client, we'll go around and I'll be like, hey, what's up, Jimmy? How you doing, Jimmy, the electrician? And hey, what's up? How you guys doing? And then we'll come to, a concrete crew and it's just like silence. We'll pass that stage of construction. We'll move on to another group. I'm like, hey, Kevin, what's up, bro? And I was like, what just happened there? And they're like, they speak Spanish. I'm like, you just ignored them. Like, they see that you are connecting, you're communicating, you are recognizing the existence of other people on the job site, but not them.
Ooh.
It's like you're walking by a bobcat or a lull. You're walking by a piece of equipment versus people. And I'm like, listen, if you just smile and wave and give a thumbs up, like that can resonate. It doesn't have to be linguistic, right? But obviously that would help. And if you say, excelente, right? Or gracias, that can be enough, right? Just how do you build that? And what you were talking about reminded me of kind of that 7 habits of highly effective people concept, which is like the emotional bank account, right? Like, are you making enough deposits so when you have to make a withdrawal, accountability, you screwed up, we got to have a tough conversation. Do I have enough deposits in there that I can say, hey, I care about you. We've been doing this for months. I need a little tough love right now. And you've built up that trust, that base of that enough where you can have that conversation. But if all people know is the only time Kevin shows up or Hartman shows up, I just get yelled at, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to put their head down. They're going to act like they don't understand you. They're going to try to ignore you because no good is going to come from this interaction.
Yeah, and there's no smoking gun there, right? So if that just gut punched you, the Bobcat reference, which I'm sure it did some people, and maybe even there's no malintent there. They just don't know what to do.
Correct.
Let's say they haven't taken your construction Spanish course yet. They can't speak anyone like a Spanish. What else can they do?
Smile. smile,
Acknowledge.
wave, fist bump, like, and that's where I was like, and my experience is this industry is made up of, by and large, good, hardworking people who care about their job, care about the craft, care about quality, care about other people. There are just these biases, and I think the way that, quote unquote, this is the way we've always done it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an element of fear. I don't want to look dumb. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I was like, hey, there's something human about looking at someone, smiling, give them a fist bump, say thank you. Like, you say thank you to a Spanish speaker, 99 times out of 100, 100 out of 100, they're going to know what you're saying. Like,
Yeah.
They're not going to be like, I have no idea what you said. They know what thank you means, right? So, and what I always say, and I might have said this to you when going through our construction Spanish classes, counterintuitively, what you are going to find when you speak whatever Spanish you are capable of saying, you will hear more English in return.
Oh, okay.
Right? The reason is they're thinking, man, my English isn't great. And then they hear that and they're like, oh, I know more than this guy. And all of a sudden, we're meeting in the middle. And,
Yes.
and we help Spanish speakers learn construction English as well. And we kind of say the same thing, which is, I know, you got to be a little vulnerable, right? But different cultures approach vulnerability in very different ways. We approach uncertainty in different ways. And there's a lot of research. And that's kind of the idea of good excellente in the book that I wrote. We go into kind of these 8 cultural dimensions that say, listen, if you just know this a little bit, and it's not just Anglos and Hispanics, this is a human thing in different cultures.
Yeah.
If you know what questions to ask, that is kind of the beginning of that journey, that awareness that, hey, we can adapt to what we do.
Yeah, and I've noticed that over time. It doesn't have to be perfect. I tell people I could speak statement Spanish, but
Yeah.
not conversational Spanish.
Sure.
So I'll go out there and I'll have this weird look on my face. And I'll instalar los vidrios rapidamente, and they all, because they know my heart, they know that's not an order. They just know I'm like saying a statement, and they're like, they just get a kick out of it. But they appreciate it, man. They know I'm trying.
Yes.
And I actually don't like that word that I just said, because there's been a couple times I've quote unquote
Which one?
tried. Like I'm trying to learn
I got you.
Spanish.
I
So
got
I took your course in construction Spanish. I would highly recommend everyone, and let's get a plug for it in this section, because it's very applicable. But where I fell off was after the course ended, and I didn't keep putting the reps in.
Yeah.
And I wish my daughter's taking bilingual courses in first grade right now.
Awesome.
And they guarantee loosely that she'll be speaking conversational Spanish by 3rd grade. I think it's much easier to pick up as a kiddo as it is
Agreed.
somebody at my age. And those are all cop-outs. I didn't put in enough reps after that course.
Yeah, and that was kind of my experience, was being on the job, and what led to me launching in 2011. There was probably, 65 to 75% of all the workforce on the job sites we were working were Hispanic, and the vast majority of those preferred Spanish. So drywaller, painter, concrete guy, landscape, et cetera. There's a problem. I'm getting a call from my team. You're like, Hartman, can you talk to this guy? Hartman, can you talk to this guy? After a while, I'm like, that's it. No more. If you want to be successful leading and building relationships in this industry and building trust, you do not have to be fluent, but you have to solve kind of the 80-20 rule. The most common problems and questions and issues that are going to come up, and the most common ways that we can show appreciation when stuff does go right, you got to know this. Right?
Yeah.
Bought Rosetta Stone, bought Pimsleur. I went through, I literally bought every construction Spanish book in the market. And finally, we went through them and we spent money on them. I'm like, dude, these guys don't need farm animals. They don't need fruit. You know what they need? Drywall, cleanup, thank you. Lock up at the end of the day was a big deal, and residential construction. And I said, combination of probably arrogance and naivete. I'm like, forget it. I'll do it myself. So that kind of led me on that journey, and then got out, and when we launched, found out immediately on commercial construction. Walsh was one of our first clients because my brother-in-law worked there, still works there. And they're like, dude, we just spent 6 figures on fill in the blank of this company. And it's terrible. We're getting bad reviews. We have to follow up. So they started talking about all these complaints. And I was like, well, hey, here's something that we've built. It's not really a thing yet, but it could be a thing. And that, we had enough people say, if you build that, we'll buy it. So that was what kind of gave me that confidence. But to your point, it's all about how to make it really relevant.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to try to get you fluent. and I'm not going to cover grammar. Why are we covering subjunctive after 2 weeks in a language course?
Yeah.
I was in the classroom for 8 years. I still hated subjunctive. I just go to a guy and be like, how do you actually say this? And he would say it. I'm like, do you know why? He's like, what do you mean? I say it because I say it. Like these guys aren't going to say, Kevin, you should have used the plusquamperfecto tense there. Walk me through. They don't know. You're just either saying it right or you're not. So I'm going to say, listen, I'm going to give you the answers to the test. This is how these guys talk on the job site. 15 minutes a day, not fluent, just get you enough to solve these problems.
And if I remember correctly, it's like a little booklet that has a cheat sheet of those common construction words if you take that course. And one of the things that stood out is like, hey, if it ends in ION, chances are it translates letter for letter. So like, just put the Spanish spin on Sion, and like, so construct Sion. Like,
you got it.
And it's close enough. They're going to understand what you're talking about, but you just have to reference it often.
Yeah, so we call those Spanish twins. And the idea is there are thousands and thousands, nouns, verbs, adverbs. There are thousands of words that are very, very similar. And you probably experienced this when someone's like, hey, Kevin-o, can you pass-o the ketchup-o? I'm just speaking some Spanish here. I'm just adding an O on the end.
Right.
And I will say, number one, don't do that.
Yeah,
that's
not
super
work.
funny. Number two, there's a lot of truth to it. There are lots of words if you add an O or add an E, and there's a lot of words that are literally identical. You just change the pronunciation. So if I'm going to teach Kevin, I'm going to say, I'm going to give you all these. You already know them. You just don't know you know them. Let's work on the pronunciation and give you thousands of words in vocabulary. Now, how do we kind of move to that kind of construction of the conversation and moving more into your statements? So I think that's really natural.
Yeah, and so if you're missing the mark and you're listening to this and you want to meet your people where they are, whether they're subs and you're a GC or it's people within your own organization, how do they get a hold of this course? Through your website? Sign up? Is it online? Is it in person?
Yeah, great question. And thank you. So it is. So Bradley Hartmann Co.com. If you just Google 6-week Spanish, so that's kind of the series. The idea is it's 6 weeks long, 15 minutes a day, Monday through Friday. Really strong believers in blended learning. So I don't know do you remember, when did you take that?
A few years ago.
Okay.
I don't remember, 3 to 4 years ago, I'd say.
Okay. We might have upgraded it since then, but it's now, you get a big book. It's very visual. So you get daily videos that come straight to your phone. You have a book that goes with it. We have an app that goes with it. We had audio conversations. So you can hear a very gringo construction worker talking to a very native Spanish speaker. Like, so you can hear what these conversations sound like. And then next year, what we're going to be doing is really kind of drilling in. So if someone's like, hey, I need glazing Spanish, I'll say, well, here's the deal. I'm not going to write another book on glazing Spanish. Yeah. However, what we can do is we can have a module that is going to be within the app that would really identify, say, your top 20, or basically supply those in something that's much more like Duolingo. So you can go deeper, and I don't have to make the commitment to then go into a hole for 6 months and do videos and audio and write a book and all that stuff on that. But we can still get really, really specific, which is what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it might have been longer because if I could be wrong, but I think I got a CD with it. And today I have nowhere to put that thing.
That's a sign. Yes, that was in the early days. We were struggling with. So we're also in. Construction Spanish, or we also have safety Spanish, is in Texas A&M, Texas State, Prairie View A&M, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State. So we were going through this weird period about 5 or 6 years ago where the older crew was like, where's the CD? It can't be digitally only. I want to make it easy. I want to throw the CD in my truck. Meanwhile, we got the students that are like, CD? It's like, what is that? Is this a coaster? Like, what
construction documents?
Yes, thank you. So we were like, we hung onto that CD for some of our tenured veterans who were asking for it. And finally, we're like, dude, we're moving on. Got to cut it out. So yes, that was probably several years ago, a couple iterations ago, but yeah.
Yeah. And so over the years, this dual language and bridging that gap in construction is not the only thing in offering. You do a ton of stuff, including writing 12 books. I had no freaking clue. Holy cow, man. That's awesome. But construction negotiation is a huge deal. Uphill, downhill, in between departments. So I just want to tee that up. Like, what are the hot button items right now that you're really leaning into?
Yeah, I'll take a quick step back to give some context. So
sure.
Coming out of the gate, 2011 to 2014 or so, obviously the residential market had been destroyed most of our clients right off the bat were commercial construction folks. We had a few suppliers. So we had a drywall supplier in Denver, and we were helping them with their Hispanic marketing, attracting and retaining Hispanic workers, and selling to Spanish-speaking drywallers. So he calls me and says, hey, man, housing's coming back. And he's like, all the old purchasing guys that we had relationships, they are all gone. And we are struggling with sales right now. We don't even know what to do. He goes, when you're out next week, we grab a couple beers, and can you tell us what it was like to be in purchasing? I'm like, yeah, sure. I go in there, get a couple pops in me, and I just start like, don't do that. That's idiotic. People hate it when you do that. Do this. Yeah, more of this. I get a call, like, I think nothing of it. I move on. Like 30 days later, and the guy goes, hey, early returns on your like little sales training. It's fantastic. He's like, had our best month we've had in the last like 3 years. And I go, I'm like, fill me in again. Like, what are we talking about? He's like, when we went to the bar and you helped us with sales training. I go, that? He's like, yeah, I want more of that. He goes, we're still going to do the Hispanic marketing. And I go, I said, okay. I'm like, that's not really what I do.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm asking you if you would do this again because it was great. So I come back out there. Long story short, I had this whole packet because I knew I wanted to write a book that became this book I wrote called Behind Your Back, What Purchasing Managers Say Once You Leave the Room and How to Get Them to Say Yes. So I told him about this and he goes, you buy that? You write that book? I will buy 12 of them. And I'm like, all right, 12 for you, 1 for my mom. I'm in. So that comes out in late 2014. And all of a sudden, there's not many people who work on the construction side of the business who bought for a living, who then leave and kind of spill their guts about the great things and the insightful things and the annoying and dumb things salespeople do.
Sure.
So that gets out there. Then all of a sudden, fast forward, I'm getting asked to do keynotes, book sales are going. So now all of a sudden, I say, like, listen, I'm not a sales trainer. What I will tell you as a former professional buyer who had lots of negotiation, I will tell you ways you can annoy me less. And it's resonated. So all of a sudden, this other part of the business, which is construction specific, large, I still struggle with sales training, but that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But it's understanding what's happening on the buy side and how you can build trust and help each other and not just focus on price. So that kind of leads into negotiation.
Gotcha. So this is more on the sales side of things. How do you
It is.
land the deal?
Yes.
What are the tips and tricks? What are a couple of them?
Dude,
I don't want to spill all your secret sauce. But just a
No,
couple.
it's all good. And I think what you're going to find is a lot of these we kind of know, but we haven't been trained. Most people in our industry I've found have not been trained on negotiation. I would say the biggest thing right off the bat is thinking that negotiation is an event versus a journey. So I'm thinking about working with you. I think I can help this guy. And I see Kevin, the minute I go to your website, I want to start thinking about what are your needs? What are your fears? What are your pains? What are your opportunities? What are things you're not doing? And the first time you and I talk, you realize we are in a negotiation, right? Unless I want to compete on price, I need to start thinking about what does this guy really want? Not only professionally, but personally, right? And this is this negotiation journey. And I find this idea of concessions, which we should be building up concessions of things that I can give, things that I should ask for.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we don't do that. You come back at the end and say, Bradley, I'd like to work with you. We're from Chicago. We're both gingers. You're 7.5% high. And I'm like, okay, let me talk to my owner, right? And now we're just talking about one dimension that I think we'd all agree price is rarely the most important.
Yeah.
But if that's the only one that you and I can distinguish on, now we're competing on price. And I'm either going to say yes or no, or I'm trying to split, Never Split the Difference, which is another fantastic book that I'd recommend to a friend by Chris Voss about negotiation. So the idea that I want to collect all the things that I know can help you, and I want to keep these over here, and I don't want to give away anything for free, but when you and I have to go back and forth, we're not just negotiating in the dimension of price.
Yeah, and it's just bigger than that, right? It's a mindset thing, whether you're trying to sell, negotiate, lead your team, like just stopping for a second and saying, like, am I after my selfish agenda, or like, am I hearing this person? Am I trying, what's in it for them?
Right.
Like, what I'm trying to sell to them, but what's in it for them? What is the value created? Can they see the value, or am I just trying to hammer a number? And I've had some humbling moments. We're Chicago people, so like we're just hammering down. We go straight to the point. We're going to rifle the information. I remember a golf tournament like a decade ago with a guy that's now a really close friend of mine. But I landed him at his GC tournament, and it's hard to grab those guys at their tournaments. It's like
Sure.
a kiss the ring type thing. So I got this guy. I'm kind of an outsider looking in. As soon as we take off in the carts, I'm sell mode. Hey, what's up with this job? Where's our number at? He stops. He goes, Kef, we haven't even teed off on the first tee box yet. Can you give me a chance to breathe? And then everybody's laughing out loud at me. And
Yes.
I just like wanted to sink into a turtle shell, dude.
Yeah.
And it was a good reminder, like, this is a relationship business. The investments and deposits, kind of to your point earlier, just chill for a second.
Yeah.
Listen.
Well, I had someone make an observation to me early on. And I did the same thing where, by the way, the worst way to start a new business is if you come from a purchasing background. Every email gets responded to immediately. Every voicemail gets returned. Every joke you tell is hilarious. Every haircut you get looks amazing. Then you leave that company that has like, publicly traded kind of cachet. You start your own company. Nobody gives a damn. And all of a sudden I'm like, nobody's returning my phone calls. And I realized I didn't know how to sell. And it's the opposite when you're buying. Everybody cares. Everybody wants your attention, right? You're kissing the ring there. And I realized like, all right, this little venture is going to die very quickly unless I try to figure that out. And the guy told me, he's like, listen, when you go in, do not forget to ask, regardless of me, Kevin, what is the biggest pain in your ass right now that you're dealing with? I'm going to leave. What's the number one thing on your mind? And if he says, you know what, I really need to find a videographer. Your response shouldn't be, well, shucks, I wish I was a videographer because I would have gotten the sale. You should say, Kevin, let me do this. Let me think about my network. Let me think about who I know that might know somebody. Can I call you back in 48 hours? Nothing about me and negotiation or construction Spanish or any of that stuff. Would you be willing to, if I did a little work here, see if I can give you a little more information on finding a local videographer? You would say, yeah, that'd be amazing. I have nothing to gain from that because I'm not a videographer other than the fact I'm trying to be useful.
Yeah.
And that really stuck with me, and that's been really helpful. And I was like, if you help people long enough and they know that you're a resource and they call you, over time, they're going to figure out a way for you to collaborate or refer you to other business.
Yeah, I'm going to make you uncomfortable for a second. What I like about people is when they're authentic and they walk the talk. And so there's been two instances, very specifically what you just pointed out. When I came on your podcast, you were a connector between the two people in the room. Your third-party videographer, Ocular Pop, shout out.
Yep.
And you said, hey, they're really great. If you ever want to use them, there's no skin in the game for you. End up using them a few weeks later. The other thing, which really stopped me in my tracks, was a Texo board meeting, and you caught wind that I was in the finishing or final touches of a book. You're like, hey, whatever you need, man. When the time is right, you come on my podcast. I'm going to buy copies. You're not giving them to me for free. I'm going to give them to people. If there's anything I could possibly do in your journey, just let me know. So what Bradley's talking about, he's walking. So kudos to you, man. That's a big deal. And I think I say often, when you've went through the trenches to build the connections that you have, it's an obligation. You are obligated to connect people together. Well, what a blessing. When we walk into that Texo room and we have those relationships, a lot of people don't are outside looking in. And then I met this lady from church a couple weeks ago. She just moved from the East Coast and she's trying to start a business. And I'm like, I got 17 women I want to introduce you to, to help accelerate that, because without those people, it's some tough sledding to find your tribe.
Well, I had somebody say to me early on, he said, generosity and thoughtfulness are always in short supply. And I thought, okay, that's right? Most people are going to default to think what's in it for me, personal self-interest. By the way, the Chicagoan culture, I thought being from the Midwest, we had Midwestern values. We were nice to people. And then I moved here to Dallas. I'm like, well, we were a bunch of jerks. We're nothing like what they are here. They were so nice and so generous and so thoughtful. So there's that cultural element. But if you think about that, you're like, all right. And I know you're doing this now with your books. It's a generous thing to say, dude, I kicked my own ass and I cut open my veins and I bled all over the page. And I have this book here and I can just give it away to somebody and say, I hope this helps you.
Yeah.
It's an easy way to be generous. But if you think about, and this kind of goes to our tagline we always talk about, we close every podcast. I actually went back to check. So going back to July of 2017, even the very first podcast we did, we closed with our tagline, which is, you are owed nothing, deliver value first. Might have had you say that when we did your pod.
Yeah, I have a hat that says that.
Yes, you do, right? And I'm like, if everyone can take that, including me, for my kids, me towards my kids, that I'm not owed anything and you got to deliver value first. If we all kind of come to the table with that mindset, you build trust faster. And yeah, there's some risk that And it happens that you're generous and you're thoughtful and you get nothing in return. That's going to happen. But my experience has told me most people are going to try to find a way to at least say thank you. And then at that point, you don't owe me anything.
No.
Right? So.
Yeah. And that becomes selfish in its own regard because I start craving that. I get so excited when I know I can connect you and you together.
Right.
And it's like the reward is just doing it.
Yeah.
But not initially. You have to, that's one of those fake it till you make it for me because of, I would say, the Chicago upbringing, because that's more of a what's in it for me. Like, and I had to break that out here, and finding people out here help you in that regard.
Well, I think that example that I didn't know you connected with Kristen and Austin at Ocular Pop, but they are unbelievably talented. And I'm like, that gives me joy that you guys connected, and then I got to hear about it. Like, everybody kind of wins in that scenario, right?
Triple win.
Yes. All the way around. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a hard right turn now. Construction analytics. Here, welcome to my ADD brain.
You and me both. Yes. Where did that come from? So I remember like where I was the day I started reading Michael Lewis's Moneyball in 2003. I was on a job site out of Algonquin, Illinois. And I remember reading this book, which is really about, despite a game, a business that has been around for 100 plus years. At that point, it was 125 years. That people could look at the same thing and there could be new knowledge, new insights about how this game could be played. Yankees are just saying, hey, I want to put $200 million and build the greatest team. Oakland A's say, well, what if we think differently, right? What if we look for undervalued players? What if we get a little math involved? And I remember looking at the job site thinking, dude, this is everywhere here. So I tried unsuccessfully, to get, Moneyball for construction. And every step of the way, I would try how would Moneyball apply here? What are the analytics? How can we get this data? What are we doing with it to make better decisions? Short answer for me was not a whole lot up until about 3 years ago. And I think part of what really gets me going on my purpose is about kind of building strong teams with guys who have unique ability, what they love to do, bring energy, they're great at it, and they can help drive profits. So I started thinking either we're going to do one of two things. We're either going to partner with an analytics specialty firm or we're going to hire our own data scientist. So we ended up going the former. So we've got a partnership with a small analytics firm who does most of their business in healthcare, which is amazing because they're coming in asking all very simple, important questions about why we do what we do in construction. And so 3 PhD founders, they kind of handle all the analytics. We kind of come in to kind of really spur and drive it. Sometimes work is kind of that translator between regression analysis and what the hell we're talking about versus, all right, how are we solving business problems to running more profitable, safer business in some cases? So that's been really exciting. And we've been on that journey for about 3 years now. So on the sales side and business development, there's a lot there that we have kind of ROI metrics on helping business development sales folks be more successful. We do have a few local firms here that have strong NDAs that do not want me talking about them, but are really about ton of data that they get, right? The modern job site has so much data. And how do we do this to help guide behaviors, help predict behaviors on running more profitable job sites? So it's been exciting.
Yeah, let's speak in generalities. Because of that, I kind of think of data analytics like a construction schedule, which putting a schedule together is data. When we do it on pre-construction, it confirms whether or not we can hit that schedule. Like as a specialty contractor, the GC gives us a schedule. Initially, I might be like, knee-jerk, absolutely cannot happen. But then I lay it out piece by piece, and I'm like, well, if you hold up your end of the bargain and give us the approvals and all that, we can do that. So I think similarly, data tells you a story if you allow it to, if you're collecting the right select data. But I think that one of the most important thing is if you're on this journey of collecting data for whatever mission, like, are you communicating why you're collecting it and are you using it?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an interesting one here. And you would ask like, hey, is there an example? And I'll say, there's something that we can give listeners to this episode. So 1950s, there's a guy named Glenn Breyer. He works for the U.S. Weather Bureau. And he has a relatively simple question. Kevin, how can we tell the difference between someone who says, hey, 50-50, it's going to rain on Wednesday, and someone who says, I think with a 70% probability it's going to rain on Wednesday. Wednesday comes, it rains. how do we show that someone who had a higher, not only prediction, but a higher confidence level that it would, how can we score that? He came up with some math. It's called the Breyer score. So we have an Excel template. I'd be happy to share it with you and the audience. Also do kind of a quick little overview explaining it in a little more detail. But the idea is, and we use this with our executive coaching clients, if you are making a prediction saying like, listen, I don't think there's a way in hell I can meet this deadline. I would say on a scale of 0 to 100, 0 meaning it's impossible, 100 meaning it's certainty. How well do we know, Kevin, over time, are you a good predictor with the confidence level that you have of what's going to happen in the future? What's been fascinating in a few coaching clients' situation, horrifying, is some people find they're really, really bad at that. And they will say, 90% confidence, Bears are going to go 11-6. Market 8. We mark it down and we follow up later and be like, you were wrong on that. You were wrong on this. You were wrong on this. So even on some of this data, a little bit different than we were talking about before, that we collect, how do we collect information to say these hunches, these intuitions, these heuristics I have about what's going to happen in the future? Can we track those so you and I are better decision makers? So I've been doing this for like two years now. And you can start to see certain categories that I'm overconfident and often wrong. So I go to my team and say, listen, I know I'm trying not to be the loudest voice in the room, but I'm probably going to be the loudest voice in the room. We have data now that when I make decisions on these, I'm overconfident and wrong often. So what do you guys think? And how do we bring that in?
And that's a set of data in itself.
Yeah. Yes.
Is there like a line between wisdom and experience versus an emotional response? So you're a GC and you say, hey, I need you out there in March next year. And I go, absolutely not out of the question. And I'm just emotionally responding rather than using data. Is there like a split between those two to figure out predictability? I don't know.
I don't know either. That's an interesting question. But I think what you're getting towards is how often do we have a instinctive response as an answer? And I had one of our early data scientist guy, he said, hey, when it comes to data, ask these 3 questions. Number 1 is, what should we know? Number 2 is, what can we know? And number 3, and only then, is, what should we do? And he said, too often, and might as well have been describing me, is too often we jump right into what should we do? We got this problem, what should we do? How do we handle this? And I think a lot of really successful people that are listening here have become successful by solving problems, jumping in, making things happen. But if you take a step back and say, all right, we have the situation. What should we know, right? Are there things we should know? All right. Now, maybe we have data on that, maybe we don't. What can we know? That might be, hey, moving forward, we need to start, for our executives, start tracking their predictions and their confidence level to see if, are these people good at making decisions?
Yeah.
Right? And then number 3 is, what should we do? That forced me to take a step back and say, okay, it's a different type of data we can collect, but now we are intuitively making these predictions with these confidence levels all the time, but we're not quantifying them and we're not tracking them.
I think that's, depending on your personality profile, that's game changer. Like just taking a breath, like if you're a hard charger type A like me, laminating what should be done, what can be done, what should we do in front of my face. So then when I'm calling, right. I'm like, give me 3 minutes. Yes. Like Stuart, he's the exact opposite. So like he would ask those questions naturally, not me, and that's what, and the whole dynamics of personality profiles and all that, but like just taking a quick hot second and thinking through it before you answer.
Well, I don't know if this has ever happened to you. We have data that we collect for this exact reason. Something will come up. I will be aware of the issue. I will be aware of the question. I will jump in. I will make a decision. And someone later will say, why are we collecting all this data? Why do we have this historical record here just for this situation? If you're just going to jump in like the hero, save the day, and make the wrong decision. I'm like, fair point. Why don't we do this, right? And then it's like, okay, decision controls, right? But I'm like you. I'm like, this whole idea of accumulating research and being super thoughtful and then acting, I'm like, I think we can pick this up on the fly. I think we can move a little bit faster. I think we can take advantage of this, that sort of thing. So it's to your point of just leading yourself, understanding yourself, and are there tools and frameworks that can ultimately help us make better decisions.
Yeah, I love that. I know we already promoted the company earlier, but let's stop down just for a second. So how do they get a hold of you or your company's resources? What's the plugs?
We tried to, on our website, we're trying to organize it a little bit better, but our approach on the website was kind of that you were owed nothing, deliver value first. Let's put a ton of stuff out there. So if people are interested in the 6-week Spanish, let's put the videos out there. Let's put the audio out there. Let's put out the first chapter of the book. I don't want anyone to spend any money that they're not going to get value from. So if we can try it before we buy it, great. So we did rebrand. We had 2 different companies and 2 different websites and 2 different sets of business cards. We had 2 different podcasts. It was ridiculous and stressful and annoying and expensive. So finally we went through this rebranding, and it wasn't 100% me, but I just own it. I'm like, listen, because I'm an egomaniac, we just called it Bradley Hartmann Co. So Bradley Hartmann Co.com is where you can kind of find all those things. And we break it down into basically kind of linguistics, the construction Spanish. We have Hispanic employer of choice, which is similar but different. And then we kind of have basically selling and buying in the construction industry. Those are kind of the 3 segments. And if you click on those right at the top, tried to provide a bunch of resources. And then obviously we got the Construction Leadership Podcast, which like we're doing what you're doing, which is trying to talk to smart people. I don't know if you were effective here, but share stuff that takes a lot of time and energy and isn't cheap.
Yeah.
But again, it's a way of being really generous. And to that point, I've learned a ton from you as well.
Oh, thank you for that. And man, you're doing what's needed in this industry at an extreme level. So thanks for leaning into your purpose and your passion behind it, your entire company. I've got to meet several of those folks, whether it's through email or in person. It's just an awesome team, really moving the needle in our industry. How we close these things typically is just, we talked about a ton of items. Like, what's the one big takeaway you'd like for listeners to get from this episode?
Well, I'm going to give you 2 things. Number one is we have to plug. So we started the construction industry's first game show.
Boom.
You're going to be on it soon. We have a couple episodes out. We basically said ESPN around the horn, talking heads from different area, a little bit of insight, a little bit of entertainment, 20 minutes or so, video first, but it's also going to come out in podcasts. We've got 5 episodes out. We're recording one. You're going to be on it. It's going to be a blast. It's going to be a ton of fun. So we started the Construction Leadership Game Show. But to answer your question, I think the one thing that I'd like you to take away is the one thing that I'm constantly reminding myself. It's on hats. It's literally on my shirt right now.
Yeah.
And this isn't for me sharing this with everyone. It's a reminder for me, which is you are owed nothing, deliver value first. And again, if we take that approach consistently in our personal and professional lives, I just think there's more generosity, there's more thoughtfulness, and it's a more enjoyable way to live and I think build America.
Love it, man. Some of these simple things that are just profound, right? Like just a few items, one statement that could really change the course of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, Bradley. Thank you for joining us, my man.